speech, relevance in cities, because allow me to be a little bit sometimes bold and blunt in speech, in making this speech, because when I coin this word and I see, okay, but this is my position, that in many of our continents, particularly in Africa, cities are becoming irrelevant for social, political, and environmental reality of Africa. And in my view, our practice is betraying our own society and our own time. So the attempt, the appeal that I am making in front of you is to reclaim the relevance of cities in reformulating our future as we are embarking and discussing on the issues of our future. Well, 2050 is all about the future, and the future is always difficult to imagine, and we always are forced to swing between hope and despair, particularly being an Ethiopian and working here in this part of the world. Of course, we wanted to hold on any strand of hope that we get, while despair is all around us. But again, the conference organizers wanted to articulate on the notion of technology in changing despair into hope, which is a very difficult challenge, I would say, because technology itself is accused of generating despair, particularly in our reality here in Africa. However, I would keep on furthering the notion of the whole conference in exploiting and exploring the potential of technology in transforming despair into hope. But I prefer to quote Cedric Price, an architect philosopher, when he said, yes, technology is the answer. But what was the question? Because we are pushed and driven primarily through economics and politics to chase and also to ride the chariots of technology without even asking where we're headed. So that's why in the 60s, Cedric Price had to ask, yes, technology gives us a lot of hope, a lot of answers. I mean, just like the early modernists, when modernism was somehow established or formulated, the whole theory of modernism was anchored in the promise of science, the scientization of everything, whereby we were told that science would bring us all the answers that we seek in life. It was only later that we realized that probably it was not the case. That's why we have to reformulate even theory of modernism without even simply adapting it. So that was why Cedric Price had to say, well, yes, technology is the answer. But what we have to understand and ask is, what indeed is the question that we're trying to ask? And oftentimes, the writers of technology are also giving us the questions in economic terms. Yes, the future to 2050 is such an abstract notion, and particularly for us designers, that has been our tradition of bringing the future into our drawing table and then operating in the future, because we define design as somehow kind of optimistic prophecy of the future, because you don't build, you don't design for yesterday's actually. You only design and build for the future, which is an unpredictable and unrealistic attempt, I would say. But that has been the notion upon which the profession of design and upon which the body of knowledge of projective thinking is established on, thinking of the future. I have these two notions to extend to you in my brief speech. These are, one, urbanization as a defining phenomenon of our nation or our region. It has been long neglected In many of Ethiopian development policies, this term has never been showing up in the last 30 years, except in GDP2. That's why our political and economic discourses were falling short of the notion of urbanization. And the second one is, as cities are, to say, the heart of urbanization discourse, what sort of cities shall we conceive? What sort of urban reality and urban systems shall we conceive for 2050? These are the two things that I am inviting you to think with me. I'm not really here to offer some sort of an answer, only to underline the phenomenon and then share it with you. I assume, and I do believe also you share with me, that this is my famous wheel, which I call it the disaster loop, for which the Ethiopia is known. I think we have been branded with it for this disaster loop. Every 10 years, Ethiopia stretches its hands to bed. And in the usual analysis of why we are literally entrenched in this kind of disaster loop, has been named, also I was hearing earlier, with presentations after presentations, one can identify some of the problems. We have population grows, and then you have what comes afterwards. And I think we all are here in this nation, so we know the whole narrative of the disaster loop. But by the end of the day, when we project the future 2050, this disaster loop is also taking away the scarce and vital source of survival, water and soil, probably. But we have seen so many attempts in the last 50 years in this country, with all the changing regimes. Everyone was trying to somehow break this disaster loop in this nation. And we have all these kind of prescriptions from donors, from international advisors, from the elite or whoever. And then I think you can see all these prescriptions have been tried in order to break the disaster loop of this region. Yeah, one could say some have shown some results, but it seems that nothing could be formulated to give us a hope of the future. Because the environment and the despair, the density of despair in the air is infesting our minds as we know it. What I'm saying is probably what we've never tried in this part of the world is an intensive urbanization, a mobilization of societal change to break the disaster loop. Because Ethiopia is characterized, as you know, still one of the least urbanized nations on earth. Even in sub-Saharan African standard, which is around 70% urbanized, Ethiopia lags behind a lot. So the idea that I am trying to share with you is that urbanization probably as a process, as a dynamic process I would say, is a chance to exploit, primarily to get away and escape from the loop of disaster. Because, like it was presented this morning, for me it was super sectoral, I would say collectively and holistically, urbanization is a package of societal transformation, which also addresses many of the themes and the notions that my colleagues, my friends were mentioning this morning, which means food security, energy, water, and also technology and education, or any other services and infrastructure that one aspires to cater for a kind of affluent society. Here I wanted to underline urbanization as a process of holistic and social-spatial transformation. Holistic social-spatial transformation. It is a shift among all the other complex definitions of urbanization. I would rather use this particular one, which says that it's a shift in demographic concentration, economic structure, social-cultural organization, spatial configuration, particularly land use, and then also a shift in political structure. In brief, it's a shift in lifestyle, livelihood, So when one talks about urbanization, one is referring into this package of societal, socio-temporal transformation. It's not about building cities. It's about changing and transforming culture to cope up with realities which are impending for survival as well as for flourishment of life. Of course, nowadays we're arguing globally that the future is urban, whether we like it or not. 2007 was marked as a year whereby the world has shifted in terms of demography. The more people are living now in cities than in rural areas. Forget about our situation, but that is the landscape of our reality on this globe. Yes, the world has seen and is passing through an urban revolution. One can quote big names, philosophers like Henry Lefebvre, decades ago, but this is what we see. And we know that in these new civilization, cities are the heart of this urban civilization. But when we say the urban is, that the future is urban, we're not saying that the future is, made of roses. Nobody is saying that cities are places of only hope. But of course, cities which are emerging without its reality, without its right understanding of the forces which are making the cities, we know that cities can indeed be venues of hope or venues of despair, as probably many of you have read The Planet of Slums by Mike Davis, or even against him presenting cities as venues of hope by Edward Glaser, Trying for the City. Our century is actually polarized with these two positions of cities and urbanization. In one part of the world, the urban centers and cities are indeed becoming places of despair, where people are pulled into this whirlpool of despair. In the other parts of the planet, cities indeed are places which offer hope for the kids to chase. When we come to our reality, of course everybody here, I would say, would hope that our cities, our urban centers, would offer us a place of hope for survival and for articulating what life is about, what life is all about. In 2050, as the program or the conference organizers have somehow projected, 100 million new souls would be coming or would be added to these spatial and political sphere called Ethiopia. 100 million new souls in less than 30 years. And we also know, those of us who are living here, we also know that the current rural landscape is failing the existing population. We also know the current rural economy is failing the existing population. We also know that it is getting saturated, which means already, without being added, without having all these millions of souls being added, the already existing swelling rural reality is pushing its people into cities. Those of you who have been here in Addis for the last 10 years, you know what I mean when I talk about the push factor from the rural areas into cities. Which means the 100 million new souls have to be absorbed in cities, as it is a norm in the other part of the world. The United Nations, UN Habitat have reported that the whole increase in population of the globe would have to be absorbed into cities. Of course, the question would be where, how, what type, which models of cities would absorb 100 million new souls You can add up the already existing push from the rural area. What sort of cities, which cities would absorb the 100 million in 30 years? The organizer, professor, was reminding me what I wrote years ago, a very small, short paper, back in 2003 probably. I coined it by saying the next urban explosion in Africa or in Ethiopia, where I say we probably need to produce a city equivalent to Addis Ababa every year in this part of the world in order to absorb what we're having now as a challenge. And I say and I claim it is an emergency situation that we are in. Back then in 2003, well, of course, our political